한번 못 빼야 뭐.
되네? 되네? 내용이. 아, 루프? 루프 가까서 오고. 루프 대회 가서 선 루프 대회 가서 선대나 선대거나 선발되고 경험 말이에요. 루프 때문에 카레나 선발되고 때문에 로마도 개배 가서
예배 값다 생기부 조세가
생기부 조고
생기부 조세. 라포데 가랑 존 카타.
Okay, I'll be good. There's a couple of people I know for listening who are here anymore.
Maybe.
I will do it. I'll flip it. But it's on the right side, right? No. Oh, you want it on the right side? Yes. Not the left side?
That goes like that, behind your head, and it goes over the ears.
It's a little tricky. Yeah, I just don't. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Go like this.
Oh, okay. All right.
From the back over your ears. There you go.
Okay.
Dorje Dorje Nelo Naroda Marba Melo Juje Gamoba Deza Yeza Gamje Gamaba Jeye Jonje Jubanzananda Rada Zarza Baraden Robazo Zadya Jilang Anyebe Nyame Nongo Namo Gajila Zorwan Zorgajila Mana Nyuban Zeno Namda Zenjela Gamje Gamba Zombavye Zena Gala Jayeme Bada Zende Duda Jube Gamjela Yenga Yemba Meba Zenjela Gamje Gowa Zombavye Menga Derga Jebela Mala Janda Zovan Debe re je jang ge gong ba nyo do yo zong je ju dan zo je yo na la zong je ba re da ne jab zhen je da ge je zo je yen ro lai bi zi san je zhe ba yo san je ju dan zo je yo na san je ba ra de da ne jab zhen je da ge je zo je be zo nam ro lai bi zi san je zhe ba yo san je ju dan zo je yo na ba ra de da ne jab zhen je da ge je zo je be zo nam ro lai bi zi san je zhe ba yo zim je dam je de wa dan de ve je dan de ba ra je re dong a ra da dong a ra je je dan ra wa ra je me be de wa dam ba dam man ra wa ra je je nye re ja da nye da ra ve ta nyan je bo la ne ba ra je zim je dam je de wa dan de ve je dan de ba ra je dong a ra da dong a ra je je dan ra wa ra je dong a ra me be de wa dam ba je je nye re ja da nye da ra ve da nyan je bo la ne ba ra je zim je dam je de wa dan de ve ja dan de ba ra je dong a ra da dong a ra je je da ra wa ra je dong a ra me be de wa dam ba je je nye re ja da nye da ra ve da nyan je bo la ne ba je da da sim je dam je lo ju zo ro wa sin je lab de zo ra ju lam de ro wa ra sin je lab de zo lam dra ba za wa ra sin je lab de zo dra ba yi ye zan ja wa ra sin zo da da sim je dam je lo ju zo ro wa ra sin je lab de zo ra ju lam de ro wa ra sin je lab de zo lam dra ba za wa ra sin je lab de zo dra ba yi ye zan ja sin je lab de zo da da sim je dam je lo ju zo ro wa ra sin je lab de zo tu lam de ro wa ra sin je lab de zo lam dra ba za wa ra sin je lab de zo dra ba yi ye zan ja wa ra sin je lab de zo je yo ra je na zan me ma ge za ra do mo nga la yam zen jo ge nge ra nge be ma nyo ne ye za ra go ra da do ma be go je za da ra nga zen je la za ye za zo ne jo da ra za bo yo da la wa ye go ge da lo de ba je zo yo da da ma nga ra zo wo me a wo be ze ga ra be ma ze de wo me nga wo be ze ga ra be ma nga dum ren za ben za za ma ya an za za wa ze de ba la o ra ma ha ra na za ra za ra ya za da re re za za ing ra ga du zo je je da ja me nam la le la ga yi zen je la zong ge zen je la ye la do je zen je lo wa ye go wa zen je ye da ba zen je la la ye yo wa ye la ge ye do ba zen je la wo me a wo be zeng ge be ma de wa ra ge ne ga ya a be ge za wo wa ga be ge za da be ge za wo za wa a be ge za re mor de za la ma ro mo je da ge nyo ra be me de yo ka de jin bu ko ne ji song chen ko song do je ngo do za do zo wo me ju je je bo ra na de zo za je gon je ngo wo ra se ju gong wa zo dong ze be za wa la ma na la go za za sa ju gong za wa la ma la go zo gu ba jin bu so ran de da me ne lo rang wan zhe ba chen de zhe ba nyam ba ra zhen je lo ju ba zhen je jo je den zhe nyam da do be yong de bam dai sang je ma na de be jam ze ze long do jam ze ya la go za 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 zo go de zo je la ma da re so zhe de ji mi ne jin Gandhi Gyamtso de Jin Ra Gan Barway Dorje Gyabla Soran de Rana Zhongzho Ni Je Topgyal Ying Te Re Ben Char Gong Gyamtso Le Kotang Ye Gan Na Ye Tse La Pe Ren Zen Na Ye Gong Bang Ngon Jo Kyo Ola So Teni Ta 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 Nye Ren Gan Sa La Yo Pe Teni Chu Zho Na Ba Ta Na La Teni Ta Xio Pa De Le Xio Ta De Ta Lin Ta Teni nga tso yang dambi chu so ke le ka ze len ra mando ro len ze len ra kang ta chu chi zo ko na kang dar yang nga tso yang ko ka re lin che tan zom ju yu ko ka re song wa de la teni tso ma la nge teni tu ji che xio ta xio pa de le xio ya yin
Good morning, everyone, all of you who have come here from near and in a couple of cases from pretty far. And I welcome all of you and I thank all of you for giving us all this opportunity to meet together and discuss the sacred Dharma.
Tene da tsoma ke namga da nyambe simji tamji tenji dewa la na me ba yang da bro zobu sanje chi komba rumbo chi tobar sa te chi da da ge dari tambe chu samo gang ye tsur gen da sin nyamsa lang war jo nyambe tene tomar ka long sang chen cho do tok ji ne sinji de ke chen bo re de dar da tene simple hyos.
Please listen with the motivation of bodhicitta, which is the thought that you are listening to and will practice to the best of your ability the holy Dharma in order to bring all beings without exception to a state of lasting happiness, which is the state of perfect Buddhahood.
Tene kan simbar sawe chu che ramba tene ta da kya ke me to kan la pop la kar rimjo partin sawa lama Terchen college wa Terchen Barway Dorje ke tene chu ke na tene ta ringju kama ta ni chu te ma ta samo ta na ke chu ta jarta ni ma ke chu ke ri na ta ter chu khon na batam ter ton khon na batam jel te cha cha ma yo ri ye pa na ni tene samo ta na ke chu de na ni ki ko ri tene samo dana ge chu de ti na na da kong gang gar na ni ma hyang de dan de na na la drop da lam nam jo ko mang bo che ri ta mang bo che ri ba ro dor ji jer dang da dan da ri tene gang za so so ge kam da wang bo dan tam ba ge go ni tene la drop da lam nam jo de nyam ni si na tene so so pin to chen bon jong ko ri tene ta rang ge kap so yang a so ge kong ge lam nam jer je ma hyo ko ri then the Tama Ketini Telo Rupatse the Drum, then the mood of Dimbogoni, then is simple yours.
Yeah, I'm going to go get myself some water.
No,
Someone is getting it?
Oh, sorry, somebody.
If that's taken care of before the session, no one has to miss listening to what Lama Troppo is saying. Just a general point. We are concerned with the teachings of our destined teacher, the flower on the deity on whom our flower has landed, the Terchen Barway Dorje, whose teachings to use the Dharma, thank you.
Thank you.
The Dharma terminology of the Nyingma tradition can be divided into three categories. The lineage or teachings based on the Buddha's words, which also includes his own compositions. Teachings which were received by him as treasure or terma, and teachings he received through profound pure visions. Of these, we are today concerned with the third. And within them, we have been going through, well, not for a long time, but technically we're still going through, a series of Guruyogas focused, for the most part, on Terchen Barway Dorje himself. And they are all very much alike, Lama said, in their effectiveness, their blessing, and so on. The reason for the diversity or number of them is so that individuals can practice whichever one suits their disposition and needs. So with that introduction, now we'll go on to the next one, which for those following in the English is on page 237.
Oh, did then Lama Namjur say at the lot of say at the Zote da Sanjig Chu Kapanta Sumzo Gona da Teba and Yin to Teba da Tikpa Chimbo the Sangha Nani Sangha la Kongsu to call it. Lam Sangha Nyamse Linki Kanzar Yendi Zonde, Ta Lama Zosi call it. Ladub the Zosi call it. Lama Chipomato Samjumi, the Sondep Lama Chipomato Mewandawata, Gomja Lama Chipomato Mewandawata, Koran Jimmy Limbata, Kimchi Long Chiram Jatan, Terchen Barway Dorje, Tendali. Ta kanyin ka lama tamji zoku na ta sazo nyamni sinkin sangha nyamni sinkin u na simer eni zonde ta tosa lama to ko menga nyamsni ko de ta ten de menga nyungnyong ri la tin lama salab ri la tin ne ten la nyamsli ko ta ten ga so chama ka ha ko ri lama se ya de zo kare yin ba de ten lama de la gandu khek si go ko yu Lama de la Gandrikan Tongna si go Yumi Gorte, that Mambo that go to young read Saleringa, so Loma Nimba Janjari with the Sarbandina and the Mr. Miri. Then the Loma Nimba Tamjika, Halamzan Hako, then the lad of the Zo Katsi Yemen. Lad of Saya, the Lama Saya, the Katsi Yemen, Lamtongi Katsi Yemen, so Mulong Samtala Chambanagi read or the Menjin Kindra or the Nazo Tsama. Dark house na deal the makes ngazo chamala blind eyes and our radio or the menjing kin raw the so the lama in batting ngazo ha ko yori ngazo chamala da don't some jam chapan damna de yo batting ngazo ha ko then ngazo go love jang yearning bo sin in yamni se go na love jang sili ko ka miri to chu miri dank yo mari da lo chu a pachar zone to win the call and that's it then it to chu miri then the lama menga chipo the tin Tene ko nyolam dorje te balam ni sang cheche lite la sang je go na ta la dom da so ta lama da cheche to te ba ta na mu ri sin do ne yi chi ri sin do ne lam te la te ne tene tu to bi hi ju le je ne tene ke je lu tin da la sang je ko ro te nga so ta te nga ka ju mar ma ta so dorje chan de zong de ten da le je nyen ma da sa ge ka ni ri mi nyam ni sin ki tam ji ke Lama Namtarti Latajin Hakokori. Then the Zo Hakokoya, the Terry Concaneto, the Lama say at the Zo Karemi, the Terry Sanghanyam sinking Zo Terry. Metsi ni to Tipa Chimbo Ti, Kola Lama say at the Geta Chimbo Miri. Lam Sanghanyam Nisikuna, and the ancient many meat Maronwa. You not teach over, me not tap chopper. Sancho Semla Dubawayan Nangi Tachador.
To give you a little context for the practice of Guru Yoga, as you no doubt remember, the Buddha's teachings are traditionally divided into three vehicles: the common vehicle, or Shravakayana, the great vehicle, or Mahayana, and the Vajra vehicle, or Vajrayana. So the practice of Guru Yoga is principally a practice of the Vajrayana. But not only is it a practice of Vajrayana, we could even say it is the practice of the Vajrayana. From the point of view of a student of the Vajrayana, there is no Buddha other than one's Guru. And there isn't ultimately no practice other than praying to your Guru. And we see statements to this effect in the writings of the omniscient Jigme Lingpa, the omniscient Longchenpa, and many other great masters of our tradition. Therefore, the question of how to view the Guru, the question of how to treat the Guru, and so on, is of vital importance. But I won't go into details about this because all of you are old or senior students who've no doubt heard this explained many times. The point is that for us, the only way to turn on the lights in the dark house of our minds, the only way to open our eyes and see the light of reality is devotion to our Guru. And therefore, we see historically, if we look at the lives of great masters, such as Lords Marpa, Mila, and Gampopa of the Kagyu tradition, or the many enlightened Vidyadharas of the Nyingma tradition, that it is through trust in the Guru that they achieve Buddhahood. To the point at which we could say that if one's trust in the Guru is complete, Buddhahood can be achieved, and in fact will be achieved, in a single moment, and through that alone. Therefore, we would have to say that devotion to the Guru and supplication of or prayer to the Guru is not only indispensable, but is also all-sufficient in the Vajrayana, just as bodhicitta is both indispensable and all-sufficient in the Mahayana in general.
Tene nga zo nangba ge chu de nyamni si nangba ge chu la jangwa da nyamni si seya de la mangbo hyo ma ri sam chi bo ma da ma ri sam tu sam gom sam za tene dambo tu ba de gang la gang sam si tene sambe gang la gang sam rong do ju tene zo de gom ba de nyamni seya de ri sang ge gon na gom nyamni seya de gom ja ya de ma gom ba la sang ge mem yong song sang ge jo ma ri tu sang ni ge sang ge ka ma ri 라진 상계 까마리 특박에 상계 까마리 도 손나 취지 제보 전에 마트를 가서 삼도 걸 망보리로 그래 주그 제보세 야래리죠 대리 차도 수적이 규모터들이 차야어리 대인도 투삼니데 고리 투바다 삼바니데 고리 쪼고리 대인데 고리데 쪼데 곰바고리 곰바미는 상계 까마리 곰고나 라마미니 곰치가 말이 나죠 자와 니네 곰치 그 말이 라마 맹아를 때는 곰냥네 세네 라마 콘레 대나니 라마 뇨 냠뇽진 거리 곰자 냠뇽진 라마데 친이데 된 바로 거리 곰자데 라마 땡데 자와 라마 땡 라마 때게 오네 자네 코나 냠네시 라마 찌 삼지 마차발라 땡 대라 대바다나 무거 콘 또비기 유데 찌 든지키리서 라마를 땡나 사람이었던 조거리 아 사람이 어떤 좋은 거리잖아 라마 때바 잠진 좋은 거 말이 다 레니 잠리 해나 라마 되게 드니치 송거나 땡아랑 그때 냠네시 드럼나 라마 되게 맹아 땡네 때라 태섬 자완이 님이래 다 산징에서 송나 오네 톱 고야 등알라 톱송 삼니를 다 디토를 주고 다 디토를 주 타직 토도 주 바시 되니 디토드니 냠니 적시서나 냠마르겐데 야르젠 로야 요리다 센네 기보야데 사르차다 띵차 제체젠 로 다디 태첨데 적 마추나 라미 같이 맹아 땡데 라메 맹아 범 땡데지 강강리야 오마리 도르 로마선데 야르 로야 오마리 데인데 로마데 템르세야데 라메 땡데 로메 맹아 대파 이치를 토데 땡네 디 템르 템 존데 템르 템 존데 데니 고 집행다 집달들 매다 매자니 tre만나기 되니 거 또비 줄 제거래라 레 사워 제거래 되니 같이 검나 도르 론도 제데 찍시나 라마 탑도 그 윤도데 찍시나 소마 탑도 거래 가레시나 라마리 이치 오마리 라마라 대바 오마리 이치 오마 도른도데 라마 머르정리 가 냠도 간도데 라마가 로마라 냠도 조 문조죠 라마망 제게 라마 닝마 상한 닝마 냠니 생기 라마데 로마를 해단 로코 말이 로마를 준조코리 준조죠 로마라 제와미는 준조로 말이 로마랑가 롱간도나 로메 라마데라 산진 통말이 로마망 제게 라마데라 머르 통도 간다오 당알라게 아미라 연행본 로리 콩도 ngala kadin che kona zambalin diga demo tata tusum je sanje so je kong kadin che se yo mangi ngawi kadin te tata tin ko And then drawing range are the Samsung Ake, Ami Gaborilla, Chonra. Then the Toby Julie Chokim Jehomari. Tina Mambo Jendo called it, they certain Lama de Samsa Loma the Trundokori. Loma de Drugoya Zava Terimado, Lalapala, Jeva mean the Zeva Meva Mari. Di tap the hero of the Sondon Jargol. Lama dea, Lam the Jangdo Kiri, Lama, Mur Peps and his own day. Pem dun Sangeri or Mari, Contazambola, Gyamtso Mari. They are Loma Lele, they some pass and gory, Talama de Lam Donkey. And the Lama take Lam Jang the Godri, Lam Jang the young Yamari the other. Then the Lama get tapped in here, Mambo say gory. Then the Lama dan Loma Palat and Gerard Tru Chagole, Lame Loma that Zewa Chokchimbo Yoring and the One Tranek Tambichu Konare could you the same you the Jetabari scene. Dig Temba Simgil Pintolering is Zotabli see some Nireke, Mayor Teolim, but Loma Tila the Joret Linyata, Naran and Singing Ratoviata, Dinga Chabdare down in Naran Chamber Chayata, Loma Dinga the Juchimbo Corners and Tindu Hilama la Homari. Tindu Huna de Lama Tinda Rom Lama Marila. Lama get Seva Carriorsin and Dingone come some Corvan then Dundreke Java Drami Basan and Turdiori, Dongan Yong the Yori, Dongartin Damtin Ya Singwa Jami Dala Job there and Dongan Damtin Ya Talire, Tarpacam Sal left telling a lamrin the Latin, Sanireke Zewa Chimbori. Zewa 13 and some sort of Lomaga calling your Rome with the Lame Trotting College. Top the hero Songder, Trotting you turn the Trotting call, Topgyal de Pama Pagina. Then you call your Katsina Chongonda or Richard, Lamaga Gorica, Traboritina around Sunday, Hiwaritina around Sunday, Tapki Songder go on the Lama de Lama de Jonkori. Then the tender what you Lama Latina, then not so hot lepachek in Yamara Regandala, Yamni compellant Roya, the Toby Jula Jen. Tendriche la parta la temdren zamjori zamjori teni teri tende ta te ke te ngotun dor dure kyo pa yen teni nga so ma kyo ka lam nam jer sanap chambe sa ro la so
I'm going to blow my nose, and as we all know, that's loud. When I'm done, I'll let you know so you can turn it back. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but that was pretty loud.
A little bit.
Okay, I'm done for now. Sometimes it may be helpful for us to gain perspective on the totality or entirety of the Buddha's teachings. Because sometimes we get so caught up in details that we feel overwhelmed by the apparent plethora of things we are expected to know, things we are expected to do. But if we step backward for a moment and look with perspective on the Buddha's teachings, what we call the practice of Buddha Dharma does not really involve a lot of different things. It's not really complicated. It doesn't really have that many different elements or steps. It basically, as the Buddha taught himself, consists of only three things: hearing, thinking, and meditating. First, we have to hear the Dhamma. Then we have to think about it to make sure that we have really understood it. But then we have to actually meditate on what we have come to understand. Because while hearing and thinking are necessary, they are really only preparations for or preliminary to meditation. It is meditation alone that will bring us to Buddhahood. Therefore, the Buddha said, without meditation, there is no Buddhahood. We could even go further and say that if we hear the Dharma and think about the Dharma, but don't go on to meditate, we actually create a danger for ourselves. Because the nature of conceptual or intellectual understanding is that it is not the direct experience of reality. It is maintaining or coming up with concepts and abstractions about reality. Therefore, the more elaborate a conceptual structure we develop through hearing and thinking alone, the more jaded and callous we can become toward the Dharma. Because the Dharma for us at that point has become something increasingly divorced from reality, divorced from felt and lived experience. And this is why a guru is necessary. Because if hearing and thinking are necessary preliminaries to meditation, but on the other hand, can lead us into abstractions and concepts that move us further away from the truth, further away from reality, the meditation we practice based on those has to include experiential guidance. It is only through practical experiential guidance in meditation that we can transcend or cut through all of our concepts and all of our adherence to the information we have acquired through hearing. So therefore, we could say that not only do we require a guru in meditation, but we require a guru who has considerable experience in meditation. Because they have to themselves have at least enough experience to be able to share that experience with us in a helpful way that will enable us to return to direct experience from whatever intellectual jadedness we may have worked ourselves into through the albeit necessary hearing and thinking. Furthermore, and for the same reasons, meditation itself, as we practice it as students, must consist of precisely following the instructions of our guru. This is not because it is a matter of blind obedience or fealty or loyalty to our guru. It is because only through doing it in a precise and correct way will we be able to cut through doubt. It is the nature of hearing and thinking and the intellectual understanding which they produce that, and this should be obvious, that it is dualistic because it is conceptual. Dualism is always of the nature of doubt. Direct experience itself is not. So we have to, when we begin to actually practice meditation, practice it in the precise manner or exact manner that will cut through and eradicate the doubts that we began with and that we may have actually even increased through the process of hearing and thinking. If we don't do that, if we practice meditation in a way that does not cut through our doubts, then our doubts will grow. And our doubts will grow not because we are bad, but because we know on some level that we are not yet encountering fundamental reality. We are not yet encountering the truth. So therefore, we experience more and more uncertainty, more and more hesitation. That is not a healthy practice of meditation. The healthy practice of meditation, as we understand it in our tradition, really begins with, through practicing the Guru's precise instructions, recognizing within yourself the true nature of reality. And from that point, it must continue with, based on that recognition, a final decision, an irreversible resolution that there's nothing beyond that needs to be recognized. But that resolution, that decision, which is itself the only possible precursor to liberation, can only arise when all of your doubts have been dealt with. When all of your doubts, all of your uncertainty have been eradicated. We could even go further and say that if doubts are eradicated, progress toward awakening is not only swift, it's actually easy. Which means that all of the problems, all of the obstacles, all of the difficulty and all of the hardship we experience practicing fundamentally come from our own doubts. Therefore, when things don't click, Lama said, in situations where there doesn't seem to be a meeting of the minds between the guru and the student, where the practical instruction that the guru gives is not applied by the student, we have to question, where is the problem? The problem could be, he said, on the side of the guru. It could be that the guru doesn't know how to reach that particular student. In other words, their experiential practical instruction, however well meant, may not communicate in an effective manner with or meet the student's needs. But the problem could be, and we need to look at ourselves and ask this question as students, the problem could be on the student's side. Because even if the Guru's instructions are perfectly suitable for us, even if they are carefully and skillfully given to us, if our attitude toward the Guru includes hesitation, includes doubt, then it is impossible for us to receive or practice their instructions without doubt. And this is why Guruyoga is so important. Because in order to get the message, in order to actually receive the instructions in a practical, lived and felt way, our perception of and our attitude toward the Guru must be a very particular one. For this reason, especially in the Nyingma tradition, and this can be confirmed, Lama said, in the history of our tradition, gurus maintain distance from their disciples. Sometimes this is a little hard for people to understand in a receiving culture. As Buddha Dharma has passed from India to other Asian cultures, and then finally to Africa, Europe, and the Americas, the cultures from which it comes, we could call the source cultures or transmitting cultures, and the cultures to which it is brought, as it was brought from India to Tibet, or we could call receiving cultures. Obviously, there is going to be some awkwardness in the transportation of the Dharma from a source culture to a receiving culture. And this awkwardness will often involve how to relate to, how to treat gurus. Because we don't have, in a receiving culture, examples from the past. It's not something we grew up with. It's not something we see or saw around us. So therefore, when we find ourselves involved in the Nyingma tradition, as we are when we study, for example, Dzogchen, we can be dismayed, Lama said, by how the Guru seems to maintain a certain distance. It's not bad that we think this, it's natural. If the whole point is meeting of minds, how is distance going to help? Isn't distance itself going to be a problem? Perhaps ironically, Lama said, and I keep on saying Lama said because some of you have asked, are you saying what he says or are you making this up? Which question is an insult after doing this for 40 years, just want to say. So when I say Lama said, that means he's really said that. I don't need to step out of translating in the first person and say Lama said. I do it because of the remarks that have been made to me, especially recently. So Lama said, ironically, or apparently ironically, it is actually for our good, for our spiritual welfare, that gurus of the great Nyingma tradition especially keep distance. Even to the point where, and sometimes these stories can be highly amusing, they will avoid or even flee from their students, sometimes in dramatic and apparently comic ways. We may ascribe this to eccentricity, and these events can sometimes make great stories. But the reason is not eccentricity, or at least not that alone. The reason is very simple. You have a saying in your culture, familiarity breeds contempt. So you already know this. It is natural as human beings that when we associate with someone, such as a guru, while we may initially, especially when seeing them as a rare and precious thing, and our relationship with them is limited to receiving rare and precious teachings, and we're filled with gratitude and inspiration, we may initially regard them as the Buddha himself. But as we get to know them, and especially if we start socializing with them, it is natural for us as human beings to begin to project on them. The Guru has a body like ours, one head, 2 arms, 2 legs. We assume that they're like us. We look at the Guru, and they seem to walk and talk and breathe and eat and drink just like us. So it's natural for us, since we're much more used to being around human beings than we are to being around Buddhas, to therefore gradually begin to think of the Guru as just another person. Now, this is not a cultural problem. This is a universal problem. If this were only a problem in receiving cultures, then we would not have the practice of Guruyoga in the source cultures to begin with. So don't feel that it is only now and here that this problem exists. This problem has always existed. But fortunately, there is a solution. So it is for this reason that great masters of the Nyingma tradition have been very careful, very skillful, very intentional in how they relate to and how they spend time with their students. Now, you may wonder about my own situation because, of course, my main guru was my grandfather, Kartu. Therefore, one could think there was all the more danger that instead of viewing him as Samantabhadra, as I do, I would just think of him as Grandpa. So he was, while I spent a lot of time with him, which was necessary so he could give me, the precise training and detailed training he did, he was also very, very careful to make sure that he did not do or say anything to allow me to begin to project simple, ordinary humanity on him. Because while it may sound like seeing the Guru as a human being is a good thing, while it may sound empathetic and warm and affectionate, it's actually the beginning of a problem. Because once you start to see the Guru as a human being, you are seeing them as an equal. And let's face it, if the Guru really is your equal, she or he has nothing to give you. You don't need anything from an equal. If the Guru is as confused and bewildered and deluded as you are, you're wasting your time. The Guru must have something to transmit that you don't already know. The Guru must be able to do and teach you how to do something that you don't yet know how to do. So, the fundamental need for Guruyoga, and you'll see this reflected, especially in longer liturgies of Guruyoga, where it will say, although you may appear to be just like us, in fact you're not, and so on. The fundamental need for the practice of Guruyoga is to stop this process of our decaying or gradually degrading perception of the Guru, to maintain that beautiful freshness of seeing the Guru as Samantabhadra, of treasuring the Guru's physical presence, words, and intentions. And so we practice the Guruyoga fundamentally as the effort from our side as students to maintain, well, first gain and then maintain a pure perception of the Guru, because that is necessary for there to be an actual meeting of minds. But Lama said the Guru is actually helping us at the same time. we shouldn't feel that we have to do all the heavy lifting here. The guru, and this is one of the more onerous responsibilities of accepting the burden of being a guru, the guru is simultaneously facilitating our pure perception by blocking avenues to impure perception. And they have to do this through very careful behavior, careful speech, and sometimes avoiding us. But their purpose in this is their facilitation of our effort to transform our perception. Now, you may have noticed that the guru, to do this, has to be well-intentioned in a very specific way. If the guru's goal or aim in interacting with his or her students is fame, acquisition acquisition of any kind, they will demonstrate that by being agreeable, by meeting students' expectations. So we could actually say that if the guru always meets students' expectations and is always agreeable, that's not actually a good sign. Because that's a sign that they are trying to, as you would put it, get along to get along. Get along with you in order to promote their own agenda, the acquisition of fame, money, power, whatever. So if the guru's motivation is selfish, they will try to meet your expectations and be pleasing to you. Therefore, we can assert the converse of that, which is that if the guru behaves oddly, avoids you, is not what you expect, that's actually, rather than being a bad sign, that's a good sign. Because that means that they are more concerned with your well-being than their own. They are more concerned with facilitating, assisting, helping, serving the transformation of your perception than they are with acquisition and respect. And so it is in this way, Lama said, that the interdependence, or tendra, between the guru and the student is established. From the student's side, the practice of Guruyoga and the cultivation of that pure perception that allows the meeting of minds. And from the guru's side, the careful or skillful modulation of their own availability, interactions, behavior, and words for the same reason.
Thank you. Then Tanga took Yoni Makuna, Lamanamji Hichanbeb Yoso, say at the name of Yokori, that things of Lamanamji Hichanbeb. Lamanamjur say at the Karenda Koko, listen, Lama Ken, Nanjura say at the Tenant Dedar, the Lamaka. Nar say at the Nasoke, Nelogatawa, Yang Tapa, Sosoke, Ranjik Yeshe, Nelog Jimba. Lama ke ngaso la ngoti ne ngaso ha kong ko le te ngaso le yin yoba de ngaso ma hin ne marek pa ta danjeng ta dimban zamba ke lo te ke drim ne de yor te lama ke chu ngaso la choran ta te nga par tan chwa ri chora mantra 축구 ngoma 축구 그 잼바 축구 이시정 오버때 현다 차바 당 이시정 오버때 던저리 송네 이신던의 치차오 송 주송바나게 너리 송는 아초 땡해 페이지는 철송데 깨직 되니라 초 라마게 다띵도나 다텔라 때는 소소가 하고죠 고는 또비히 줄을 젠제데 라마게 또비히 줄을 가서라 푸아리 또다 이신 어디잖아요 달래 또범 푸잖아요 달래 라메 대 겁다데 띵도 너나 라마게 띵도메바 랑가 거름메와게 주나 송요바 디따바데 양따바데 현하게 나르던 조언도 디나르마디 히티 조나가 하고도 되는 라마 또바데 줄지 조나가 하고 디 저라메바레 천 줄라 야르나 하고나 요르세야데 데리 나서 남절바 라건도 남절 포모 라건도 국가포 공대바 잠제 남절 포모 예베 리요바게 마차바리 대 남절바게 다리 랑단다오 때에서 단다오 고고세리 남절 포모 세야데 이히 짐바데 유르 천 요르도 나를 요르세야데 동다데 대하고 대 라마가 마테나 서적이 띵타고 말이 대인도 라마 또바 줄을 젠도 라마 남절세야데 대 라마 가든 쳐와리다 다 될 가든 쳐서 가서 문도와 가서 같이 철코 대하야 같이 철리 다른 같이 철건도 니마르 얘기한다 파차 잠에 까쳐 쪼쪼나를 대와 셈지 되고 말이 양촌을 거들 당아서 그 잡을 휴나 머리를 깨자를 히로베나 대서 세는 가보지 걸 제한도 와다 망치야데 내가 딜라리는 뭐뭐 토야데 깨자기야 그 주요 말이도 대서 깨자를 길 고가라데 잠낸다 임버 손난데 제한도 대 깨직 되니는 저라리 못다바리 대 고마리 나서 얘는 저라미 비 히디 요바데 다 라밍어티인데 다 델까든 쳐서 뭐 나서 대인도 라면 난 요르세야 돼 되니 이히 참배세야 돼 이히 세야 돼 오네 왜는 이히 세야 돼 가서 그 레라고 그 요라 현대내자 차바 치차바 랍도 차바 참무 또바 이히 줄을 지야 될 가서 이히 첨보세야 돼 이히 챕차세야 돼 노서제되는 대 디 차반다 와데 마슬 습습 가서 줄을 마음 걸 다대 대신 행하게 진짜요 산업 참배 더 희사와 요소세야 되게 더 맹대 다 라마데 까데 든두게 염바데 거디 남자 바랍 가서 히바 치아 가서 르바 짱아 담지가 맹대를 띠동네 동다데 하고 톱거리 든두게 되네 삼당고 대 맹리 다 차로 다등하게 협차변이 히더 말때 되리
So now to turn to the text. So our text for today is the Guruyoga focused on Terchen Barway Dorje in person that is called the Reign of Wisdom. And so it's on page 237 in the English if you're following. We're very careful with titles because the rule of the composition of any Buddhist shastra, which is to say anything that adorns, explains, or clarifies the Buddha's teachings. The rule is that the title must do three things. For anyone, it should enable you to distinguish the text or book from others, which is what the fundamental or common purpose of titles. But it should also enable you, enable most people to gain a general idea of the contents so that you're prepared before you hear or read the text for the information. And really, for the most acute, the title should contain the entire message. the title should contain the whole point, so that the body of the text which follows upon that, which bears that title, merely confirms what you have already come to know. So therefore, we need to spend a little bit of time looking at this title. Reign of Wisdom, a Guruyoga. Well, let's look at this term, Guruyoga. We use this term, of course, frequently and freely. And as with all terminology or jargon, we become somewhat jaded toward it. And stop thinking of what it might mean, but simply as what it refers to, which is natural for us, although not always helpful. Well, what is Guru Yoga? Guru Yoga means a yoga of the Guru, which really means, because of what yoga means, as we'll see, yoga with the Guru. So, although the word Guru comes first, we have to look at the word yoga first. Yoga, the Sanskrit word yoga, has a lot contained within it, and of course is cognate with words like yoke in English. So it has the idea of things being spliced together, brought together. So in short, the idea of uniting or union. But it actually contains a little bit more than that. The Tibetan translation of yoga is not just jorwa or union. It's naljur. And this is very important. Tibetan translations from Sanskrit, because Tibetan is monosyllabic, usually contain two possible readings of the word being translated. And this was done during the early period of translation and followed by the later translators as well, so that the hearer, the reader, be able to most fully understand not only the literal meaning of the Sanskrit word, but also its feeling affect. Nal means nature or natural, but not natural in the sense that in English you would use the word natural to mean it's natural to project upon others, but natural in the deepest, most fundamental sense. So nal means who and what you really are, the truth, true reality. Jor means application, a union, sticking, like when you stick two things together. And so therefore, union and uniting. So fundamentally, naljor means uniting with the true nature. Now, uniting with the true nature, of course, must have two steps. So Lama said, when it's explained in detail, we say that the first syllable, nal, refers to recognizing that nature. The nature, of course, being the nature, is already there. If it's not already there, it's not the nature. The second syllable, jor, means becoming so familiar with that nature that you become inseparable from it. You're stuck to it. You're stuck with it. In other words, he said, a state of recognition that has become unchanging. Now, to be clear, the nature itself, of course, is unchanging. If it was not unchanging, we could not correctly call it our nature. What must change is how we relate to it. And that change is twofold. First, the recognition indicated by null that there is a nature beneath all of our delusion that is there to be recognized. And then gaining an unchanging familiarity with it, represented by the second syllable, the second step, jur, that means that we are no longer other than. We no longer perceive ourselves as other than that nature. So when in the Vajracharya tradition, we call a man a yogi and a woman a yogini, that's what we mean. We're not referring to anything else. That is the definition, and the only definition, of an authentic yogi or yogini. It is a man or woman who has gained such recognition of their own nature that their immersion in that nature is unchanging. Okay, so that's yoga. Now what about guru? If that's yoga, and if the null, if the nature we're trying to discover is our own, then where does the guru come in? Because of the way our minds work, we have to, even though it's our own nature, because it's the nature of everything, and ultimately, as Lama said, must be discovered within us, we have to first see it in someone else. And that person, the only person in whom we can actually see it, is the guru. We could say that is the fundamental definition of the guru's job, to be a pure mirror of our own nature. So, in that sense, we could say that Guruyoga means the discovery and adherence to one's own unchanging nature in and through the Guru. So it is in the Guru, or as the Guru, that we first make that discovery. And uniting with that nature is when a recognition of it no longer fluctuates, when it becomes unchanging. And the necessity of Guruyoga, aside from what I explained earlier about the need to counter our habit of negative projection, the necessity of Guruyoga is that it seems that it is only through the Guru and only initially in the Guru that this discovery can be made. Now you might ask, why? Which is a reasonable question. If you're trying to recognize your own nature, which has always been with you, has always been what you truly are, why do you need to look outside yourself? Why? It's a good question. The answer, Lama said, is look at how you feel. How deluded are we all? The proof of our delusion, the evidence of our delusion, does not lie so much in what we think or what we believe or what opinions we may hold. It lies, he said, in how we feel. When was the last time, he posed the question, when was the last time any of us felt happy for more than 15 minutes? Now, we may come up with all kinds of reasons to do with our personal circumstances, the world around us, our physical health, and so on, to justify our chronic unhappiness. But the fact remains, it's not natural. That is not our nature. Unhappiness is not natural. It is a sickness. Our nature is happiness. In fact, our nature is a state of happiness beyond anything that the word happiness in any language could possibly begin to convey. The reason we need to discover that nature initially in the Guru is, and now I will translate freely, Jeff, to do an end run around our habits. Do you understand? And is end run a football analogy? I'm sorry, I'm not good with sports, but it is, right? It's a strategic ploy to circumvent our defense structure, the defense structure or defense mechanisms of our negativity. If you have a really pure perception of your Guru, you will be able to see that nature in them. Then you will recognize that that is your own nature. That is why we use Guruyoga to circumvent or do an end run around. Okay, that completes the free translation, Jeff, just letting you know. Or do an end run around our own delusion. And again, the evidence of our delusion is that we're unhappy. Unhappiness is not an attribute of Buddha nature. It is not an attribute of who we are. It is a symptom that something is wrong. Mental pain is a symptom that something is wrong with our mind, just as physical pain is a symptom that something is wrong with our body. So that is half the title of Guruyoga. And all of that is what is meant by the term Guruyoga. Now this specific Guruyoga is called Rain of Wisdom. And we'll start with wisdom because the Tibetan word order is wisdom rain, not rain of wisdom. It's actually, wisdom comes first. Wisdom here refers to that nature that was referred to in yoga as null. That which is natural, that which is the nature itself. Lama said, traditionally we describe this wisdom as very subtle. But very subtle does not mean a very subtle, fragile state that has to be cranked up and maintained under very, very carefully curated circumstances. It means it's very subtle in that it is beyond all our ideas or concepts, which is why we can never figure it out. We can't figure out wisdom. It's very subtle for two reasons. First of all, it is unchanging. And everything that is unchanging is beyond all dualistic thought. Because all we're thinking about when we think is making comparisons. And those comparisons are necessarily based on difference, and difference itself is based on change. The second reason that we call wisdom very subtle is that it is concealed. Not by a malevolent cosmic entity. It is concealed because it lies deep within us. It lies, so to speak, at the bottom of a pile of junk. So it's under the pile of junk. That's why it's concealed. So when we say this wisdom is very subtle, don't think that it means that it's fragile. It's the opposite of fragile. It's unchanging, but concealed.
Oh, there da young chepatela, da jorang jisms and subject number some good Tony Higanata taken drink the sari. Then the Jora the Jamro Simji, read some batam Chubar Jubata, Jamro Simji. Then in Chubar Jubatela, Gurum Buddha Dharma Sangha, yes, Sanji Chu Gedan San, Sarita, and Guratan, Sanji Chu the Gendan San, then Guru the Zovin, and so Mambo Yoko, Ritina George Party at the Conda, we can put a tambo song, then Jamro Sam didn't go to Zovia and Ziga, Condagan go to Zo, Beck, Chimbo Nankori. Then they put the several torn pick out the cover, really cups of Lama Yuga, George Party at the pull the down. Then they pull the pay shoot the touch up chamber song. Take up the doing the conquer all the Jamro Zam doing the jungle Lama all the ya yori there in Sari. Then they thought about Chimbo the Lam Sanghati can go to all the yonder there in Sari Kandaya Guru. Da Sanji Chu Genda, some Sichatan, control some the Sanji Chu Genda Mato made it, and it Lam Sanghar thing, that Tamjin, the Pongo Gorovindra, that the Ena, the Sari, then in Namos is some salo and Sarita. Then is some the job sorrow, Simcho Nizone, say I take a Jamro, the Simjin in the Hosari. Then in our number Sanji Conso, Tony Zone, the Jamroman and number Sanji Man, Sombanagi, the controls on the jobs and the hall, the Ritsamake. The big Chimbonang, check you, take what time you go. That the Tambo Netaji in the units of foot about drums on the Jamro, take a Piota, controls on the country jobs and Rogoa, Lama say at the Sanjaka, the Karen, Chuse at the Karen, Gendo say at the Karen Yemekone, Flobjon. Lepoche Gohori, that the Lepoche Gohori, that they Lepoche Mavene, and also and Sanghan and Chongdu Kuzena, Savani in Chongja Miri, control something young do, also Nagi so Sama Jeje Parto, then control something to Navian Jarni call Mari, and Nam Nyangtan Sin. To draw Yawame Baka control some the Jis Ringo, that it takes a timbori, then the sum of Tambo jobs and Roho, and the Gauso Tipa Chimbo Jamro, Dansang, Tipa Chimbo jobs and Rota, and Sari some the jobs so on the control some Sanji to the Gendos on the jobs and Roho, there, then is Simjo Nizone, then is Simjo Nizon, Seriatella. Sancho Sem number needs on the Sancho Sem number needs on the here call the concept Sancho Sem the Tondang Sancho Sem number needs on the here call Yori. Then the concept so the concept Sancho Sem the Nazo Tata meet the Moron read already. Tato Sangia gonna Tonda Sancho Sem Nelo Tawa the Matona Sangia made it concept Sancho Sem the Lo Yang the Jangori. They Majan and also Chupa Timbo the Chakaman Chupa Timbo Machaji Zawa Rangi Rose and Chamate. Sancho Sem the Loma Jamaka, top 这跟着上就个什么老马讲话个，等你第一个别个你看听不着搞的嘞，跟着上就个什么老在讲说呢，大基本怎么老的行着搞的嘞，大基本怎么个老的个，那么样咱们西巴把起切去的这个些搞的，当真这个，大基本怎么老的，这些搞的嘞，这一基本怎么老的呀，学全部的要搞的。 대 남의 깨토고 마가서 다다데 자치봉아 자치보세요와 디나 등인형마 다 자치보세요거들이 대리마서와 되니 다 줌제 다 조제 록 줌제 면다 던서야리라 로장지요리 특바침보 산조그셈 로장지 건섭 산조그셈데라 줌제 명아 던거거니 다대치 남바 담제게 로존 돈도마한데 산조그셈고 마보케 휴 学把咱们嘛做对啥嘞？三百个对了，我就里上了。的光别各自老讲有名个 Tendi Tadanga Zo Tokamando, the takes a Jang Sangu. Then the Kunzang Sanjo sent the Te George Lola, Jumdreminga, Dungogoni Lo Jang Jori. Ta then Dali change Jarsi Hawala, Lado Yapse Mata, Jarsi Hawala Galoena, the co young Sanchez and Junjo Nani, Lo Jang Dawri, Tata, the Manche Huteka, Naval, then Roche Holiday, Jumdreminga, Dante, Marchi, train zone, the Mazon, the Matela, Gablin Tima Tika, Keja Mambo Yori, they say. Ta the Sanchez, some Jarsi Hawala Lo, Teta, Lo Jang do, they say, Yil and Tebori, Dayi Javata, Dayi Yambata. Dave Yinji Gomba La Sobaga Goni, some Tanko. Then the Dachi Banzam Lord Chatham, Pachendri. They came to Tennis Sanhak Yamlis in the Lehauer, Lehauer or Sari. Nazo Tama, the Lord Yonti Matablik, so Chimba Hakondo, Naranga Hako Tokendo. Then the Techi Lord John. Then it data, then it damit of Hiraka, Zisambarak Tony, Dame Bag Top Hiraka Tony, Zisambaga Tony. Then Tony Tawatin about. Then Tombaniga, some Tombaning as what us Haking Goni here called it, Zoking Goni here called it. Tangazo now Matsaka part here called it Sazoni. Titoni, Remji, Tambo Hene, Timje, Timini, Teni, son, Ten Lamtoni, Tenita, Soso Garipa, same the corner carried, Zedar Judone, Teni called Lamandani, Teni Darcha Judone, Teni Tonika Tawatin Lawabjatela. Tin la wamne so ge simju je toba ju simju ge toba ngaran la dambo ni sanjo ge sem debar ki bi ningbo de gare yo ba de ngaran ge ha mao wa de ha go ta ba ye tini ti to ni yong ko re de da de ne de ni sanjo ge sem na ba ni de ju le je ta ko de la de de Gyamtso de simji ni de ge ni zong ne si ta de zo da Jorwa Simji Tambaga Goni, Tehako Tavasea the Peke Chamber.
Now, for those of you who may object that I go on longer than Lama does, and I'm obviously speaking as myself, and I'm dealing with objections that I've been receiving lately, obviously, it's because I can't talk as fast as he does. And also, English words are longer than Tibetan words. Any of you who know any Tibetan, which is very few, would know this. He did not explain the significance of rain here in the title, assuming that it's obvious. So now we move to the main body of the text. I said a few minutes ago that we're very careful with titles, that there are rules governing the way that titles are written, that they should serve the three purposes, which I explained. Similarly, compositions of texts, the body of the text after the title, has also to embody an initial invocation, the composition, and the conclusion. So we begin with the invocation here, which, like the title, Lama said, should give us at least a clue to what we're about to hear or read. And the invocation here is, in Sanskrit, Guru, Buddha, Dharma, Sanghaya. And so, essentially, he's paying homage to Terchen Barway Dorje is paying homage to the three jewels, but putting the Guru first. And I don't need to, or I hope I don't need to explain who and what the three jewels are, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. But by placing the Guru first, he's pointing out that the Guru is foremost, that the Guru embodies the three jewels. But by not just paying homage to the Guru, but also mentioning the three jewels, he's also pointing out the fact that through Guruyoga, we come to realize the true nature of the three jewels automatically. Next we come to the actual liturgy, that is to say what you chant if you practice this Guruyoga, which begins on the next line with Namo. Now the liturgy as a practice liturgy also follows necessarily a threefold format. Goodness in the beginning is the generation of bodhicitta as one's motivation. A goodness in the middle, the main practice, is the cultivation, the direct or indirect cultivation of great non-conceptual wisdom. And goodness in the end is the dedication of all of the goodness or practice of the virtue. So you could say of the first two goodnesses, to the awakening of all beings. So we begin with the goodness in the beginning. And here it consists of the first three lines, the word Namo, and then I take refuge in the three jewels and generate the two supreme bodhicittas. Namo means I prostrate to, I bow to, I salute, I pay homage to, and so on. It can be thought of in many different ways. And it kind of includes all of those. So you can think of Namo as any of those. And then the next two lines are fairly simple presentations of the refuge and bodhicitta vows. Now, in the Tibetan, this is much shorter. It doesn't even say refuge and bodhicitta. It says, I take refuge in the three and generate the supreme two. But all things being what they are, that needs to be spelled out. The first is, I take refuge in the three jewels. Now, why? You're very used to this, of course. Why do we always, Lama asked, begin every practice by taking refuge? We begin every practice by taking refuge because it is ultimately the lifeblood of all Buddhist practice. In one sense, we could say taking the vow of refuge is the beginning of our Buddhist practice. Technically, we are only Buddhist after that moment when we allow the preceptor to cut our hair, when we say, I do. And the preceptor cuts the hair, and then depending upon how the ceremony is given, we either repeat the vow for the third time or it may already have been done. There is a clear demarcation between our life up to then, when we were not Buddhist. We may have been Buddhist compatible, Buddhist sympathetic, known lots of Buddhists, liked Buddhism, read lots of books, and so on. We weren't Buddhist. From the moment you take refuge, you are Buddhist. So from that point of view, refuge is the only and the indispensable door into the Buddha's teachings. But it is more than that. It's not just the door. It's actually the building that the door enables us to enter. In the later 10th, early 11th century, Lama said, can I stop, Jeff, can I stop saying Lama said to keep on telling you that I'm translating and not making this up? Can we just assume that from now on? Okay, good. Just because people, ask. in the later 10th or early 11th century, Tibetan Buddhism had become troubled. And leaving aside the question of what that trouble was and what it wasn't, there were problems. And so one of the kings, at that time Tibet was not a unified country. It had been, and then the imperial dynasty had died out and it had split up into separate kingdoms. One of the kings, who is considered a holy individual in his own right, and is therefore called the divine one, Yeshe. The king, Lama Yeshe, invited from India the West Bengali Pandit Dipankara Sri Jana, who we normally refer to not by his actual name, which was Dipankara Sri Jana, and you'll still meet people from West Bengal with the name Dipankara, which means illuminator. But we refer to him as Atisha, or Lord Atisha. And his nickname, so to speak, Atisha, Ati here means the best. And Shab is short for Purusha, person. So Atisha, when we call Dipankara Sri Jana Atisha, we're literally saying the best guy, the best person, the greatest guy. And that's why we call him by that name. When he came to Tibet and observed the state of things, because he was brought to renew and restore Buddhism, the main thing he did, the first and most significant aspect of his teaching or ministry, was to emphasize the refuge vow. Not just people taking refuge, but the actual practice of taking refuge, of repeating the vow of refuge. Now, in consideration of the fact that Tibetan Buddhism, as he found it, was already of the Mahayana, and within that of the Vajracharya type, Atisha added to the beginning of the refuge vow. The shortest usual form of the refuge vow is Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. Atisha added something to the beginning of that. He added, I take refuge in the Guru. So, in common use among Tibetans, probably the shortest and most, not informal, but most colloquially known refuge vow is Lama la chobsu chiyo, Sanje la chobsu chiyo, Chö la chobsu chiyo, Gindan la chobsu chiyo. And that addition of Lama la chobsu chiyo, I take refuge in the Guru, or I go for refuge to the Guru, and in the beginning, it was not a cultural thing. It was not added by Tibetans themselves. It was consciously added by Lord Atisha. Because Tibet was a country devoted to the Mahayana and the Vajrayana. But his point in emphasizing the refuge, such that he gained the further nickname Chandro Lama, or Refuge Lama, Refuge Guru. As though, and people would say, is that all he knows? Is that all he can talk about? Nowadays we think of Atisha, of course, as emphasizing bodhicitta, because he taught special instructions, upadesha, concerned with bodhicitta. But at the time, people complained a little bit about how much he emphasized the vow of refuge. Well, why did he? Atisha was one of the two most learned pundits of India still alive at his time. So he certainly knew more than just the refuge vow. Why did he emphasize the refuge vow? Because the recollection of the three jewels is the lifeblood of Dharma practice. If you do no other Dharma practice but recite the vow of refuge and devote your life to that, you could still have a full, successful, and rich practice of the Buddha Dharma. And that is why we always have the refuge vow at the beginning of every practice. So we're going quickly. We've actually gotten through another line now. And now we're going to be really ambitious and move to the next line. And generate the two supreme bodhicittas. First of all, you might wonder, well, the two bodhicittas are absolute bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta, okay. Well, why are they both called supreme? Isn't absolute supreme and relative bodhicitta not supreme? No. Supreme bodhicitta is a bodhicitta that is aimed at full awakening. Bodhicitta means a mind set on awakening. If you're set on the awakening of a Shravaka, that is not supreme bodhicitta, that is a Shravaka's motivation. If your bodhicitta is set on the awakening of a Pratyeka Buddha, that is not supreme bodhicitta, that is the motivation of a Pratyeka Buddha. Supreme bodhicitta, even in the case of aspiration bodhicitta, even in the case of relative bodhicitta, is the aspiration or intention to achieve perfect Buddhahood, to achieve supreme awakening. So therefore, when we use the term, I generate the two supreme bodhicittas, we mean that relative bodhicitta that is focused on the achievement of perfect or supreme awakening for the benefit of others, and absolute bodhicitta. Now, why do we need, Lama asked, these two? Why do we need two bodhicittas anyway? We should ask these questions. We shouldn't take these things for granted. Because what we want is awakening. What we want, what we seek, is the awakening, perfect awakening of Buddhahood for the benefit of others. And that awakening itself is what we call absolute bodhicitta. You can use the term absolute bodhicitta to mean the recognition that brings that awakening and so on. But when push comes to shove, absolute bodhicitta is an awakened mind. It is bodhicitta in the sense of not a citta or mind concerned with buddhi or awakening, but a citta that is buddhi or awakened. However, while that's what we want, we cannot achieve that without relative bodhicitta, which we would usually call Jangchup Chisem, or the mind of awakening. So, relative bodhicitta is necessary in order to achieve absolute bodhicitta. Why? Because the impediment to awakening, what prevents the liberation from samsara and prevents Buddhahood, both, is fixation. To put it plainly, Lama used the word dakzin, dakchebadzimba. It's selfishness. Even in our generation of the aspiration to awakening, we have to be careful not to incorporate or enable our selfishness. What is the remedy for selfishness? Obviously, the only remedy for selfishness is that which cannot coexist with it. Your mind can only be in one state at a time. If you're selfish, you cannot be altruistic. If you are altruistic, you cannot be, at that moment, selfish. You may return to selfishness later, but at the moment of altruism, you cannot be selfish. It's not possible. So therefore, the remedy to selfishness, the only remedy, is altruism. Therefore, the only way we can achieve absolute bodhicitta is through altruistic relative bodhicitta. For that reason, and it is this that, as I mentioned earlier, for which he is most famous, Atisha devoted a great deal of his teaching to giving us a step-by-step series of tools to develop, to reach relative bodhicitta. And he taught that relative bodhicitta is not something that we can just haphazardly come up with. Even having formally generated it through receiving the bodhisattva vow, we have to actually train our minds in it, and that has to be a step-by-step process. Now, there are two main ways that this has been presented historically. In the instructions of Lord Atisha himself, there are 7 steps. Now, this is not the same thing as the 7 points of mind training. It's included within that, but the 7 points of mind training is another system that incorporates that. The 7 steps of generating bodhicitta begin with the thought of your mother's kindness. That's the first step. The recollection of your mother's kindness is the first step. The 7th and final step is an authentic relative bodhicitta. Now, those of you who have received either the mind training teachings given during the first year of the first Dzogchen program many years ago now, or, and this is probably far more of you, have received instruction on the 7 points of mind training, will have heard and thought about Atisha's 7 steps. But I'm not sure whether you've actually meditated upon them. That's up to you. Anyway, that is one system, one process through which you can cultivate relative bodhicitta. Another one, to which many of you have also been exposed, is that of Shantideva, which is based on the instructions of Arya Nagarjuna and his disciple Aryadeva. Those of you who have studied, as many people here in this community have, the Bodhicharyavatara with its commentary, have been exposed to this. It seems that many people nowadays find this a little more approachable, Lama said. It starts with understanding, empathetically understanding the equality of yourself and others, and then moves forward toward being able to exchange yourself for others, or exchange yourself and others, and then finally culminates with the generation of authentic relative bodhicitta. There is a further connection between relative and absolute bodhicitta. Not only is relative bodhicitta the only way to remedy, altruistic relative bodhicitta, the only way to remedy that selfishness, which is the impediment to liberation, but also relative bodhicitta itself generates the state of what we could call affective mind, or the emotional mind, which is best disposed to the practice of meditation, which must therefore begin with the cultivation of tranquility, typically starting with tranquility with a support or object, then eventually moving to tranquility without a support, followed then by the initial stage of insight, which is analytical meditation, which should lead to the revelation of selflessness, not selflessness as the antithesis of selfishness, but selflessness as the absence of existence of a self, or non-existence of a self. And then that in turn will lead to the ability to engage in stabilized, non-conceptual or non-analytical meditation on that which will be taught fully in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen teachings and so forth. So in that way, we cultivate the two supreme bodhicittas. So now we've completed the first of the three parts of the text, which is the goodness of the beginning, the generation of bodhicitta. And we have to stop there because we don't have time for the main body of the text, which is coming this afternoon.
Yep, thank you. Sonam daye damji zebani damne nyimbe jana bamze ne jega namje balavan chobai sipen zolen rowa yo gewan daye jewo ga sona yige zozo Sona yi le zong we tamba ge ni do ba yo zang jo sem ne ren bo ma ji ba na ji je ji ba nyam ba me ba gong ni gong de pe wa yo sem ji tam ji de dan den je Ngin ro tam ji da de dong ba re yo san jo san ba gang da sar yo de da gan je mo la zhe ba yo san ji re ji zhen zhen dan be ga jar gan de ya dan da len bai Sabje me zon dreve sanga ju sige zon dar jabe tra yi yo. Last one. Oh, that come on, so good. Thank you. It's a little early for this. Okay. Come on, this and that's what. Come on,